I'm a mover, and really my interest has been about this intersection between movement and the things that we move with, particularly robots. The title of the project is Output, and it's a collaboration with ThoughtWorks Arts and the Consortium for Research and Robotics, which is a Pratt-affiliated institution.
When you think about it, the human body, our kind of bodily understanding of the world is probably fairly consistent through millennia. However, the world around us is changing. Catie is addressing some of the primal aspects of human beings living in a new world surrounded by technology.
The overwhelming majority of highly grossing films about robots are all negative. People get destroyed and killed by robots. And we fetishize this idea. We think it's sort of sexy to think about robots ruining our lives. And if that's all you ever saw, how do you feel about sitting in a room with a 15-foot-high industrial robot? I showed some images of this, myself moving next to this robot, to my mom. And she had a panic. She went, "Oh my God, are you gonna come away with all your limbs?" How do I not make her feel that way? Let's do 5. And then 1 would go this way. And this is the ABB IRB 6700 robot. It has 6 joints, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is twisting, 5, which is nodding, and 6 is the face. And then it moves up and down this track, which is roughly 50 feet long. So for example, if I wanted to do 4, 1, 4, that could be some sort of sequence that I would show first on my body and then on the robot.
She is kind of hacking or deconstructing the language that the robot uses in a way. She's instructing it, she's analyzing it, and then the analysis that she's doing of that kind of internal robotic language is then influencing the way she is moving in physical space.
Essentially, the robot has a series of pre-programmed movements. It performs those movements. We extrapolate its moving joint angles from HAL, populate them into the Microsoft Visual Studio. It gets translated into a 3D model. We juxtapose that with the motion capture data of a human being via a Kinect. And then we have some degree of randomization as to which human points are being compared against the robot itself. There's also a degree of desire to make aesthetic intrigue, right? So if I'm here and the robot moves in some way, maybe I don't want to do it pedestrian and boringly, maybe I want to do it slightly more fluidity, right? So there is some degree of choice making in real-time cerebral data processing. And then there's also the notion that you'll never get it right. So for me, what is compelling about moving with robots is not only what it reveals about the machine, but also what it reveals about the person. One that is so designed, regimented, and predictable versus one that is so alive, dynamic, bizarre, and confusing. The data of the body has never been more readable. For example, this idea of using motion capture, of sensing where we are in space, of using facial recognition, these are all ways of reading data about the body. You don't need to stick a needle in someone and draw blood out of them now to learn something about their body, right? And that seems very present and necessary for choreographers and dancers to explore within the field. That if we are interested in what is the role of the moving body through space, and now we have these opportunities to comprehend the body using these different forms of technology, what type of art do we want to make to say something about that? Humans each have movement histories, and there is choreography to your everyday life. Every time you open a corridor, every time you type on a computer, you are engaged in a choreography that was decided for you by someone. We simply call that person a user experience designer or an industrial designer. They made a movement decision about how you will interact with the world. I automatically think of my dad, who is in his 70s, and I would love for him to stay in his home as long as possible. And one potential way for him to do that would be through the assistance of various forms of technology. And it means that my father will need to know how to interact with a robot. He is much more receptive to learning about robots through movement than through learning about robots based on their features. He's much more interested in the way that they make him feel. Do they make him feel dignified, safe in his own house? Are they kind and friendly and easy for him to use, right? Like these are all characteristics, attributes, adjectives that we can associate with robots, but that so much of that is perceived through things like movement. So that if a robot moves in a particular way, it will make my dad feel a particular way, and it will lead to him accepting and using that robot or not. When I talk about the way that robots are portrayed in the media, that's not a small thing. That's how people perceive themselves, and that's how people perceive robots. Unless they've experienced something else, which right now, the saturation of robots in the environment is not that high, right? It's probably likely that you've learned more about robots through movies and TV shows than you have by touching one on a regular basis, like I get to. So I'm in this place of privilege where now I have the opportunity to move around with these machines and say something about them to the external public. And that I don't take that responsibility very lightly. The arts, dance, and theater can bring to the study of robotics is reshaping much of the narrative and allowing people to recognize the true breadth of their own humanity that's juxtaposed with machines. And that narrative can be so powerful in doing that.